Greetings and welcome to the channel Love of the Truth. It's been a little while since I made a video. I was on vacation for a while. I'm continuing with the series on questions that those who disagree with the scriptures would like to ask God. The next topic that I wanted to discuss is the observation that Christians and the church are full of hypocrisy. And how could a loving God expect people to believe and find Him when that's the case? And that's a valid question. And it's certainly true that there is a tremendous amount of hypocrisy. You can't have thousands of different denominations without massive hypocrisy, because they can't all be right. There's too much contrast between the gospels that they're teaching, the Jesus that they teach, the God that they believe in, the behaviors that they tolerate or don't tolerate. There's just all kinds of conflict, and it's very logical to look at that and with skepticism. In fact, the scriptures talk quite a bit about the fact that there is hypocrisy in believers and some of the effects that that causes. One of the classic examples that pops into my mind is David's grotesque sin with Uriah the Hittite and Bathsheba, that whole adulterous error on his part, and what Nathan stated regarding the effect of that. That's found in 2 Samuel 12, verses 9 through 15, the conversation between Nathan and David. Why have you despised the word of Jehovah by doing evil in his sight? You have struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed him with the sword of the sons of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says Jehovah, behold, I will raise up evil against you from your own household. I will even take your wives before your eyes and give them to your companion, and he will lie with your wives in broad daylight. Indeed, you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and under the sun. Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against Jehovah. And Nathan said to David, Jehovah also has taken away your sin. You shall not die. However, because by this deed you have given occasion to the enemies of Jehovah to blaspheme, the child also that is born to you shall surely die. This was a harsh sentence on David, and you could question God's choices there, but looking at the net result of what was going to happen to David and to his descendants, specifically Jesus, or especially Jesus, it becomes a little clearer why God chose to respond the way that he did. And the point that the child died is where a lot of people stop. They don't go on to think everybody, every human being that has ever lived is going to die. The fact that you die is not the end of the story. That's the end of our test. Because this life is a test. And we'll look at some scriptures, Lord willing, that deal with that topic. But looking at what was stated to David here as kind of a point of discussion regarding the hypocrisy of the believers detracting from other people's opportunity to come to God, it's very true. Jehovah, through Nathan the prophet, acknowledged that David's actions were going to give people an excuse to blaspheme him. And we need to then take a look at what the scriptures state about the person who is looking at and trying to decide regarding God's existence and God's plan of salvation, the reality of life, and what's the meaning of life, and what are God's expectations for us. It's important that we look at what God has stated about life and about the responsibility to find him. A text that we just keep coming back to frequently because it states so simply and so succinctly the truth is Hebrews 11:6, which states, "And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." Jesus stated in Matthew 7, verses 7 and 8, "Ask and it will be given you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened." Now, the fact that God provides an answer when you're asking, knocking, and seeking doesn't mean you'll accept it. That's up to the individual whether they accept the reality that God has created and the truth that God establishes. It's important that we take a look at what God has stated independent of the perfection or imperfection of the source. Let's take a look at what Paul talked about in 1 Corinthians 3, and I want to start in verse 1. "And I, brethren, could not speak to you as to spiritual men, but as to men of flesh, as to infants in Christ. I gave you milk to drink, not solid food, for you were not yet able to receive it. Indeed, even now you are not able, for you are still fleshly. For since there is jealousy and strife among you, are you not fleshly? And are you not walking like mere men? For when one says, 'I am of Paul,' and another, 'I am of Apollos,' are you not mere men? What then is Apollos? And what is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, even as the Lord gave opportunity to each one." Going on, verses 6 and 10. "I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then, Neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building. According to the grace of God, which is given unto me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereupon. So Paul criticized the congregation there in Corinth because they were focused on who taught them rather than what was being taught. And another text that does a great job of explaining the responsibility of the listener is found in Acts 17:11. And the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea. Same Paul that wrote 1 Corinthians. Who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind, and searched the scriptures daily whether those things were so. So we've got a commendation for those that were in Berea, because they not only listened carefully to what they were being taught, but then they went to the scriptures to prove whether it was true. And then we're talking about Paul the apostle, one of the apostles. And the commendation for those in Berea was that they didn't accept what Paul said at face value. They listened carefully, considered what he said, and then checked it with the scriptures. So Paul's idiosyncrasies, Paul's hypocrisy, if there was any, was to be overlooked. What was to be considered was what he said, and then check it to see if the scriptures taught that or not. So the importance and the responsibility on the part of those that are listening, and to relate that to the parable of the sower, Jesus talked about the same process, in that the word is sown no matter what kind of soil it lands on, and then the behavior of those that listen and those that hear the word determines whether they're rocky ground, the road, the area choked by weeds, the good ground, and that's all a responsibility of the listener. And it is definitely aided by God's interaction with the heart of that believer, whether the hearer of the word. And the promise that Jesus expressed in Matthew 7, that everyone who asks, knocks, seeks will receive, is an ironclad guarantee. The criticism of the hypocrisy of the teachers, those representing the word, and of the church, which is to be an example to the world, is a very real criticism. That does not remove the responsibility from every individual to ask, knock, and seek, and to check the scriptures whether those things are so. Thank you again for your time, and please enter comments, enter suggestions for other topics, ask questions. in the area down below.